Welcome to Fresh One, the BD Outdoors podcast brought to you by the Coronado Brewing Company. Stay coastal. All right, guys. Yeah, welcome to another episode. We're here with Ryan Griffin and Yaz Moorhead.
Yes.
California Flyer.
Yep.
We're going to talk about a little bit about his product, just about these guys' experience in the fishing industry, and excited to hear a couple stories from them. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so before we started rolling, we were just talking about Jazz's Bisbees experience. I'll let him go into it, but he had some fun this year, and they won a pretty big check. So
Yeah.
we're stoked to hear
What
about
was
it.
the payout?
$4,400,000.
Wow.
And
And that was second place?
that was second place technically, but we got a higher check amount
Because of the rollover?
Because of the rollover. So previously we had been fishing the black and blues since 2019, and 2020 and 2021 there was no qualifiers caught. So there was a rollover for those 2 years, and then in 2023 there was a couple of qualifiers that had been caught, but the people who had caught them weren't in that like side pot. So there was, I think we won like an extra $700,000 or $800,000 from that.
Wow.
So yeah, it was quite the experience.
What was the size of that fish, the winning fish?
The first place one, it was a 501 pound blue marlin, and then ours was a 368 pound a black marlin.
And you caught that on day one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we caught it I think at like 11 o'clock or so.
Wow.
And ran straight in.
Well, leading
Yeah.
into that, though, you guys had been winning tournaments already up into that. I mean, you placed in the East Cape Bisbees pretty
Yeah.
heavily, too.
Was that a month or two before?
Yeah, since we've got the Jarrett Bay, which has been about a year and a half, our team has won over $7 million in about a year and a
Wow.
half. So it's quite a heater. We got second place for the East Cape, and that was a technicality. We should have had first in that, and then we won second place on the black and blue, and then a handful of other ones as well. But yeah.
Wow. Just curious, like as much as you can go into it, the preparation and how hectic it is, just like preparing for one of these tournaments. Because
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know what the biggest money tournament is in the world, but it's certainly up there, you know?
probably
The White Marlin.
The White Marlin Open,
Yeah.
I think, is the highest amount that's been paid out. I think it was like close to 10.
Yeah,
I think.
Jeez.
for a white
That's a
marlin.
lot.
Except in that-
I know, for a 60-pound
But the
marlin.
Bisbees is no slouch either.
No, it's like a
obviously.
world-renowned thing. It's been going on for what, like 40, 50 years.
The Bisbees?
Yeah.
Oh, at
Yeah.
least,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is it like a month-long prepreparation of like pre-fishing? Is it like the week prior you guys are in the shop?
Year
like,
round, pretty much.
year round, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so for the team, there's 3 guys who are on full-time, and then we have another 3 guys who come in, and we'll come into Cabo probably the end of September, and we're down there pretty much until the end of October, and there's 3 tournaments in that month. And with this year, there was a hurricane that had shut down one of the tournaments, and they actually had combined the tournament that had been canceled from the hurricane, and they combined that to the black and blue. So I think that was another reason that the payout on that one was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, they combine like the jackpots and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the black and blue is usually a 3-day tournament, and then the tournament that had been canceled was a 2-dayer, and they had chopped off a day from the black and blue. So it was, I think, close to $10 million for 2 days of fishing. So it was
Wow.
insane. Yeah.
That is a pretty good paycheck.
I like the 2-day tournament. I think that is
Yeah,
honestly
I mean,
a
3
better layout.
3 days is a grind. It's not that great of fishing. There's not a ton of blue marlin. There's not a ton of black marlin. For our first day, we caught the only qualifier. On the second day, there was only one qualifier.
Right.
So it's really not that great.
Out of how many boats?
Close to 200, I think. There was like right
Wow.
around like 198 to 205 in that range
for one qualifying fish.
for one qualifying fish. And that's how it's been for the last like 3-4 years.
I feel like they've gotten a little unlucky too with the weather, though. Like
The weather's always a factor that time of
Yeah.
year. Yeah, I mean, you get hurricanes that just come in, like land right on or just before and mess everyone's pre-fishing up, or roll the water conditions over super hard.
Yeah.
It's just like not that great of a fishery. Also, let's be honest, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just not that awesome of a blue marlin or black marlin destination anymore.
Yeah.
It's a ton of commercial type of pressure down there. There's like thousands of these guys who go out on a daily
Every
basis,
day,
and they're hammering the grouper, they're hammering the dorado, the tuna, the marlin. It's just hammered.
I remember you mentioned, because Ryan, you spent a lot of time down in Cabo and Baja in general, and all these commercial guys in the Pongueros, they like to fish from sun up until noon, and you're like, yeah, we'll go out in the afternoons and it's empty.
Yeah, a lot of days where we would leave the dock out of San Jose at like 5 in the afternoon and just go out and skip the yummy flyer on the bank with no one there. And
See, that's cool.
and
When you feel you just have more of an opportunity.
You've
right?
always got
it's not
a
all the
shot.
competition.
That's cool, Jazz.
Yeah.
California Flyer down south.
well, actually, I should be
Use
more
the
clear.
yummy.
Yeah, I've actually fished a California Flyer down there a few times.
Yeah.
and I think the problem is that you're just not really matching the size of the feed there.
The
You know,
Right
Flyers
there,
are really
flyers
small.
are tiny.
little ones, and so I'm specifically talking about using like the microest yummy flyers that you could imagine, like what we started doing back in 2015 here for the Bluefin is what we would that's kind of where we all learned how to do that, was down in Cabo. And I mean, we had some banger days where we'd go out and skip that thing across the bank first pass and catch a 300-pound yellowfin and just go in, and we'd be fishing for an hour or less, sometimes, or go out there. And I mean, I've been out to the Gordo in the afternoon and flipped a cavy out and caught a 300-pound black marlin, and there's no one there. And so those afternoons have been special there for sure.
That's such another fun thing about that area too, is the offshore banks are 8 miles.
Yeah.
And here we're running 90 miles to our technical offshore banks.
Oh yeah, no, it's definitely.
You could do a half day easy.
right in your backyard there for sure.
And here we're trying to figure out, okay, I gotta go 200 miles round trip. Can we make this a day trip? It's kind of hectic, I think.
Down in like Panama, they're black marlin fishing like literally like
Off
a
the
few
beach.
hundred feet
Yeah.
from the rocks.
Yeah.
It's pretty rad.
Well, Nate was in Panama, and he was like, oh yeah, we were fishing like yellowfin foam. I'm like, oh, where were you? He was like, oh, right, we're in the same zone we were fishing rooster fish.
Yeah,
Like in the
no,
surf.
It was like there was like a bunch of we were at Tropic Star.
You see dolphin schools come up.
Yeah,
and bird
like
piles.
you'd see a pod of dolphin, and we didn't have gyros, but
Sure.
the skipper would run at it, you get close, and it would just be like a yellowfin, porpoise, or dolphin mix every time.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was like, and the crazy thing about down there too is like some of the captains would get to a spot and there'd be like a couple birds or whatever, but like they have like they don't even have their screens on, nothing, and they'd be like, just throw a popper. And like there'd be like a bird and it would just be an instant blow up.
Oh
You know
my
what I
gosh,
mean?
yeah.
So it's just thick.
Thick.
Yeah,
Good
super
fishery.
thick, and
Their fish are aggro.
yeah, like they feed. You know what I mean? They're not picky there. At least that's what I saw. So it was cool. But yeah, I think it would, like, there's so many cool opportunities to like integrate the fishing we do here abroad, where they don't have access to any of this kind of tackle and it's not used. It's just, it would be so interesting to do.
That's one of my favorite things, is bringing in like a technique from somewhere else and applying it to a new region. And
You
it's
could
like,
do that for a lifetime
Yep.
all over the world.
You could never end that cycle.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. And the Bisbees, like, I want to ask a question about that tournament that's maybe a little outside the box. So you get done with like day one of fishing. Let's say it doesn't really matter. You catch a fish, you don't catch a fish. Like, do you sleep? Or are you just like, or are you just like in your bed all night just tripping on if it's going to be the winning fish or if you're going to catch one tomorrow? Like, I imagine the idea of like trying to get a restful night is just kind of,
It's borderline impossible. I mean, by the time you're done fishing,
with that paycheck on the line, like,
I mean, there was a lot of days when I was down there fishing where you're in bed maybe at midnight and you're up at 3:30 in the morning and
prepping.
walking down the docks and you're starting your day making bait and the days are 18 hours long.
Right. So a 3-day
day.
tournament, is like nuts.
72 hours of just
You're
nonstop.
just grinding.
You're cooked at the end of it. It's hot down there. It's really, really hot.
Yeah.
Let me give you some more perspective.
Yeah,
I mean, let's talk about the old before the Jarrett Bay. You're
yeah.
fishing on a center console.
On the Stella?
5 or
Yeah.
6 guys.
Yeah.
It's 3:30 in the morning. Half of us have, diphtheria or whatever frickin' food poisoning we got.
Yeah,
And
Montezuma's.
we're all sharing a bucket in the center console. And I'll let your mind wander with that detail.
Yeah.
And you're in the sun just getting blasted. Half the time there's no wind.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time the day's over, you're so torched.
Yep.
Yeah. Damn.
It's I think it's just something too that not a ton of people get to experience, especially the tournament atmosphere. It's hard to really put into perspective, how hectic and how serious that really is.
The scale of fun is not as large as people might think. It's work.
It's not.
It's work.
Yeah, it's not really that fun. But there's plenty of other trips to have fun. And in those kind of tournaments, it's just like weeks of prep to get the boat ready, your tackle ready. And then for the 3 days, it's just like you grind it. It's a grind, and you're going the entire day for hopefully one bite. And that's really like, if you can get one bite per day, you're doing great.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're doing really
I mean, it's
good.
like Ryan said, you're preparing all year.
Yeah.
If you got to grind for 72 hours, like that's just what you got to do.
Yeah.
And that's just the grind for the tournament. I
Yeah.
mean, leading up to it, the pre-fishing days, by
Yeah.
the time you actually get to day 1 of the tournament, shotgun start, you're already you've burned it at both ends. You're so beat.
So I'm really curious about that because I'm not really in tune with like the tournament and the pre-fishing and all that stuff. Is it beneficial? Like, say you're pre-fishing and you catch a 500-pound fish.
Yeah.
Are you stoked about that, or are you kind of bummed? Like, is it less of a chance
So,
you're gonna catch?
that's a good question.
You're gonna catch
you
that
stung
fish,
it,
like
you heard it,
right?
Maybe.
We had
like,
that
is it
happen. So last year, it's kind of a crazy thing. We were pre-fishing last year for not the black and blue. It was for the Los Cabos offshore, and I think that's the tournament right before the black and blue. And we'd gone out to the Gordo. We're pre-fishing, hadn't caught a thing for the whole day. Saw a couple of yellowfin, probably 150 pounds, come and blow up, and our whole team got like really excited, and we dropped a couple of baits back. As soon as we dropped it back, hook a 500-pounder, it chokes the bait and comes up just gagging on it. And there was like 3 other teams right by us and saw the whole thing happen, and that kind of blew out that whole place, because when we came back for the tournament, there was probably 70 teams right on that spot, and there was, I think, 3 or 4 fish caught there. And fortunately, we were one of the teams, and I think I caught a 398 in that tournament as well. But you don't really want to hook them right,
or you don't want anyone to see.
I think that was one day prior. So,
oh man,
and it was a huge one. It was huge.
Yeah.
there's definitely teams that are out there pre-fishing looking for the condition, and maybe there's guys just out there dragging teasers around, seeing a fish raise, looking at sonar stuff, trying to figure out where there might be a target species without putting a hook in them. But you catch a 500-pounder a couple days before a tournament,
one day before,
you're not going to catch that fish. You're not going to catch that fish the next day.
Maybe you killed
Probably
it.
not.
There's a lot of factors there that could definitely deter that fish from showing up in the scales.
Deep.
Well, yeah, and with the advancements in technology now, I feel like you can, like these yachts that have the Omni, you can go out and not necessarily have to catch that fish, but you can see if it's there.
Oh yeah, you see guys pull up on stones with the Omni and put 2 teasers out, and they drive around, make 3 or 4 laps on it, black smoke to the next spot. If you don't see what you like there, they're not going to sit there and put a bait out and waste a live bait on it. That's another factor. Shit, you're playing that game. You could have 25 tuna tubes, and it turns into 0 baits pretty quick. You got seals, sharks, groupers, all kinds of other dumb bycatch. And not only that, you just have baits that go in perfect and come out dead. It's a really hard game to play with live baiting, but that's what usually wins the money.
So in terms of just like your team, right? Like in kind of, you guys, I feel like kind of represent like a West Coast style of fishing in a billfish tournament. Like what exactly Like, I think I could give a description of how I understand it, but I think hearing you describe, like, what that means would be really interesting to our viewers and listeners.
Sure.
Like, kind of the two camps that have existed throughout bill fishing history. There's kind of, like, the East Coast camp that's more just, like, this type of boat is used, trolling heavy, etc. And then there's you guys on, like, the most badass boat ever, Jarrett Bay, before it was a... the Stella June, which was a sea hunter.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, if you could just explain that a little bit.
When it obviously works.
Yeah. Clearly.
Yeah. So the two different ways that the teams are doing it down there is you have your guys who are trolling for your blue marlin, and that's a pretty good shot at catching a qualifier. I mean, there's not a ton of qualifying blues down there. I think in this last tournament there was, I don't know, probably 30 blues that were caught, but you have to catch a 300 pounder. Mm-hmm. So it's a good chance at covering ground, and you could catch a giant one. And that team that won the tournament had a 501 pound blue. So there's 100% there's qualifiers out there, but you just have to catch a lot more fish. And then there's guys who troll around slowly with the tuna, and you're trying to catch a black, and the blacks down there are, for the most part, qualifying fish. They're all, I don't know if it's a breeding thing, if they had like a really good year that they were able to spawn, but a lot of the fish down there are like from that 350 to 400 pound range, and our last like 4 or 5 that we've caught have all been like 350 to 390. So that's pretty much the thing, and you're just trolling around stones and reefs and all that kind of stuff. A blue marlin is in clean blue water. A black marlin is a lot more like, I don't know, a yellowtail. It's on a reef.
Structure related fish.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Really? That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I mean, ultimately, I don't know obviously what conditions you're looking for, but it would make sense. Do you find those blue marlin also ever like in the same zones, or is it pretty
regionally? I think there are places where there's I mean, obviously there's places where there's blue marlin up close to the land masses and things like that, but I mean, typically you're going to be out in 1,000 fathoms of water and fishing a temp break or an edge of some kind or another, and I mean, I think the best team's the one that's well-rounded and can transition into all those elements, right? Like you got a guy that can rig dead baits and have a really good pitch bait guy, and you got a guy that knows how to rig marlin lures and be able to go out and put a really good spread together and capitalize on a bite and actually hook a fish. Yeah. And then you got guys that are, focusing on the live bait thing, but eventually you got to have a fallback plan when you're, there's days where that live bait thing just doesn't pan out.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, do you know, like, historically, the qualifying fish, if it's been more, and you don't have to divulge any secrets or anything, but have they been caught more on jigs, or have most of the qualifying fish been on like live bait, what have you?
I would assume live bait.
On bait. I would say that the last
big baits.
Yeah, the last probably 4 years that we've been doing this, I would say that 80 to 90% of the fish caught have come on a tuna.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and that's one of the hardest parts of the day, making bait, right?
Yeah, it's a whole process. You have to get your sardine, and that's the first thing that you have to coordinate, and you have to talk to a pongero the previous night, the previous week, and coordinate that whole thing. And it's a shit show out there. It's like there's close to 200 teams and a ton of pongeros running around at 4 a.m. and they're all trying to hand off the bait. And then if a guy is prioritizing the bait for one team and has another team who comes up, they're trying to pay them a bunch more. It's a crazy thing.
So crazy, we just have like bait barges.
Yeah,
so nice.
That's also what you were saying about like applying the West Coast skill sets to that tournament. I mean, I think it really goes hand in hand with making that live bait happen in the morning. You've got these, us West Coast guys super familiar with fishing small sardines, light line, small hooks, and
mackerels,
angling for smaller fish. Like, you guys are good at it. That's definitely a skill set. Making bait is. Yeah. There's people who are not good at it, you know?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, it's probably like the number one crucial thing that you have to get done right away, and there's a finite timeline on it, because if you get to the bank first, you're probably going to do well and you'll get the tuna, you'll get them tight to the boat, and then from that point you'll have another 20-30 teams come in and they just blow out the whole
school.
I was gonna say, it's where it's really beneficial to have a fast boat.
Or to have
a really
See, and
fast
that's
boat.
kind of hidden on like what I would. So there's an advantage right there, right? Because
Speed
it's
is
like
an
speed is
you
huge.
see like these sport fishers, right? And then there's like the center console boats, and I imagine the speed factor is just so massive.
That gap has been closed a lot, though. I mean, there's 70-80 footers that'll do
I know.
they'll do 45 knots.
Right.
So if you have a Sea Hunter on ours, it was a 45 footer with quad 425s, it would run 60 knots, and then you have one that's running 45. But if it's kind of choppy out, you can't go that fast. It's not,
It's a gamble.
It's
all a
not
gamble.
that huge of a gap. Like if we ran to the bank, we get there a minute first.
Yeah.
And then you have 40 other teams who come in right after. So it's not a ton of time.
But the perspective also has to be reflected on the fact that, you flip a sardine out, hook a skipjack, you might fight it for 10 or 15 minutes on 20 pound.
On 20 pound, yeah.
Finally get it up, get it in the net, it's gut hooked, cut it off, throw it overboard, tie a new piece of fluoro on, get another freaking bait in the water. You know, and there's, it's like not that easy sometimes, to get a skipjack hooked perfectly in the corner that comes up without any damage and ends up in the tube as a bait you're going to take on for the rest of the day. It's hard to make those baits sometimes.
And then
it's so technical.
It's really technical. And then I would say that they die because, I mean, for our temps down there for the East Cape, the water was, I think, in the 90s. So it's super warm. There's not a ton of oxygen, and those things are hiding inside of a black tube, and they're just not happy in there.
You're getting cooked.
So you might get
cooked.
You might get 3-4 hours out of them. So having 20 tubes is like really critical. And if you have 20 tubes, you might be trolling 2 or 3 for 3 hours, and then you go to like if you go to check out the tubes, you might only have 5 left.
Right.
So it's
so much that goes into just the bait.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing, and I feel like the blue marlin, it's a lot more of a random fishery. Like you're trolling in blue water, you can find the right the current break or the tent break, but you're not seeing a ton of fish out there. And if you go to a reef or if you go to a pinnacle, there can be a lot of bait on it. It looks good. You can run over a couple of fish. It's just like it's not as random. So I think that's one thing that our team has got like really, really dialed in, is seeing the conditions for the reefs and seeing the conditions for how everything is kind of handling on top of the bank. If you have a ton of bait that's really tight and it seems as if there's a predatory thing cruising around, it's not as random. So
but also then you can have just like the team on team warfare that's taking place, so you're on the right spot with the right conditions, and you've got a bait in each outrigger and one on a downrigger, and here comes a boat with an 800-pound seal that they're dragging over and drop it off right on your transom, and it just and then it just fingered your 3 really good baits that are in the water and ruined your whole situation, and so you've got a lot of that competitive aspect going on as well.
Moral of the story, things will go wrong, it's how you handle it. And there's a lot of luck.
There's definitely luck favors
there's a lot of luck for sure.
certain teams, right?
For sure. It ain't all luck, that's for sure.
We won't make you go into any more secrets about that, but no, it's awesome, the program that you guys have put together, and the success that you guys have had is super admirable, honestly. And all the support from the West Coast guys, whether or not people know you personally, it's cool to see a team, like a local team, go and succeed in those tournaments. I think.
Well, and that feeling. I mean, what did that feel like to be like? Oh
seriously.
My God.
I mean,
what did we just win?
Well, there's $4 million.
$4 million.
That was probably insane.
That night that we had got the tournament win was huge. It was, I don't know, it's just been like years and years down there, and for our first year that we had fished in 2019, we came so close, and we had a 466 black that we had caught, I think, on the second day, and we brought it in, and we were the first, I think we were the first qualifier to come in, and we thought we had it for the day, and then there was like a 489 that came in a couple hours after, and we had technically got 4th place in that tournament and won like 11 grand, and 3rd place was like a 1.2 million or something like that. Like,
difference.
There was hours of time
win.
though where we were like, it was the highest of highs I've ever felt. Immediately followed by the lowest of lows.
So crazy.
Yeah.
And just like when you're waiting, it's like, oh my god, okay, we just weighed that fish.
Yeah.
There's a potential for over $1 million
for today. It's like the Chargers when they were in San Diego in the 3rd quarter.
Oh man,
always in the lead, and then not anymore.
Why you gotta
Sorry,
bring it
Chargers.
Up? Why you gotta bring it up?
I don't like the Chargers anymore.
Yeah, the highs are high and the lows are low, and it's definitely it definitely takes a toll. It's a lot of work to go down there and do those tournaments. I'm over it. I'm glad you're doing it, Jazz. You can have it.
We'll support from from the sidelines.
Yeah, it's a grind, but if your team has a couple of wins, it definitely feels a lot better going into it, because it's a grind. It's a lot of work, and I'm taking time off of work to go down there for close to a month. So it's I don't know.
No,
it was worth it.
Man, it sounds like
absolutely.
It. I kind of want to transition into like our own fishery here at home.
Yeah.
And obviously
something we know a little bit about. Cool.
Something that and obviously California Fly is your deal.
Yep.
We're just enjoying hearing all your stories, but I'd love to learn like the origin of it, and then the development of the new Delta Flyer that you have here.
Sure.
Like Ryan was saying, when we first everyone was learning to fly the kite, we almost exclusively fished the Yummy.
That was kind of all there was, right?
Which still works.
Oh,
it totally does.
It's a highly overlooked technique at this point,
Completely, and it's really obviously dependent on conditions too. Like when that fish is spread out.
Yep.
If
you have wind, good wind, and you have
really
fish
good
that are spread
wind,
out. Some days that reaction you get out of that is incredible.
And I think even learning to fly a Yummy before anything else, it's a little bit more skill involved, like flying a Boston. And learning, what your tack should be with the wind conditions and all that, and makes, putting a dead flyer or fishing a Cali a little bit easier down the road.
I see a lot of people, fish the California Flyer like it's a real flyer a lot of the time, and that's great. It works fine for that.
Zins down.
Zins down.
But really our best success has been to kind of find a medium between like how we would skip a traditional Yummy flyer from back in the day when we were first starting to catch these bluefin, and somewhere in between fishing a real flyer.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, really actually getting a reaction by making that thing, skip around at 4 to 6 knots. You see a lot of people walking that bait slow. It works. Sometimes those conditions are perfect for that. I think all of our really, really good days fishing with the California Flyer have been when you have the sea conditions to like actually kind of skip it and make it sort of you're getting that big reaction blow up behind it by getting it to move rather than just sitting there and kind of slow trolling it around.
Looks natural and it's pissing them off.
Most of my fish on it have been on the way out. Like a lot of times, like if someone blew it on the boat and there's not like a bunch of baits already rigged, it happens sometimes. It's like the second bait you send out the flyer and it just gets bit quick on the way out,
and that's a perfect indicator that goes right in line with what I'm saying. Get that thing moving.
Right.
And I see it. You look at it looks like a real flyer, looks like a dead flyer. How you'd fish a dead flyer, maybe you're just walking around super slow or just kind of sitting there with it. It works. That's definitely a way to do it. But our best days have been like 4 to 6 knots
with this new one too.
Yeah. For sure. You bet. No doubt about it. Yeah. I just think you're creating a massive reaction. I always like to use the analogy of like a cat and a laser pointer. You just sit there and hold it, and it's just going to look at it, and you start walking that thing away from it. You're going to get that thing to jump on it. There's definitely a factor playing a role there like that.
Definitely.
It's just it's such a good bait to have on the boat, like Nate was saying. as prepared as we want to be, we're not always prepared.
No.
And
Or, you know, like a lot of times too, like you have a cooler, right? And you pre-rig all these baits and then you're driving offshore and it's rough. And like, depending on the
and
boat
the
you're
wings are
on,
blown out.
yeah, like wings get ripped, like stuff like that. I think it's honestly like, if you're going to take bluefin fishing seriously, like you need one. Straight up.
If you don't
It's like
have
a
one,
must.
you're definitely limiting your potential for
sure.
success. You know,
Yeah.
especially on those days where you run out of bait. I mean, Jazz and I are on the type of program now where if we go fishing, I mean, a reel flyer is the last thing that comes out in our arsenal.
That's the other thing. A pack of 3 is like $60, $70 at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you don't know somebody or you're paying full price, that's a brutal
It's
expense
really
of the day
expensive.
for sure.
Yeah.
On top of $40 helium balloons and all that.
Yeah,
that go
man,
in with
because
it.
you want to have at least like 12 of those things on the boat, and
Ideally, yeah.
At least.
I mean,
at least.
Jazz and I have done several trips where we don't bring a dead flyer with us. We just go
Oh,
out
yeah.
with the California flyer,
For
and,
sure.
and it either works or it doesn't. And more often than not, if you are focused in with that technique, you're going to capitalize with it.
Yeah.
You know.
And if you're in the right zone, if
Totally.
you're on, you got, you know, if you find fish, chances are if you're working that bait right, they're going to eat
And
at
some
some
days they're
point
just
during
lazy and breezing,
Yeah.
and they're not going to really bite anything that good. And
No.
you know, sometimes you have to put a real one out there and just let it sit on them and let a stupid one roll on it. But
Yeah.
I mean, when you put your efforts into it and you build the confidence, that's your game will change.
For sure.
You've got to have one in the arsenal at this point.
Yeah.
I think that literally happened to us last year when we were fishing out of Hunting. Where was that when we went out on on Mike's boat?
Yeah, it was
we were
Huntington.
we
Out
were
of Huntington.
fishing. Yeah.
And we like didn't see anything all morning, and then we saw a huge breeze spot, and we dumped a dead flyer on it, just still.
Yep.
And the entire school swam straight under it, nothing.
Yep.
And then we picked it up, brought it in, and put something. I don't know if it was a Cali, or we just put a different bait on, and we just moved it on top of them. That same school, and it was an instant bite as soon as that thing was moving.
Just get some splashing and some white water behind that thing, and boom.
That was also the first time Ira and Nate, we got fishing the harness.
Oh, I love
Yeah,
that.
that was my first harness fish.
What'd
Harness
you think?
bluefin. Dude, it's rad.
It's
honestly
it's really
super
rad.
cool.
I don't
You,
think
like,
enough people
feel-
do it. It was fun to watch you do it, and then Nate kind of learn from your technique, and Nate crushed it.
Oh yeah.
Thanks, dude. Well, it's just cool. What I liked about it is that, so when you're fishing, well, we use the rail sometimes, obviously. So when you're posted up on a rail, when it's up and down, like the rod's taking so much of the head shake.
Sure.
But in the harness, it's cool because you can like feel the fish.
Yeah, it's lifting your heels
It's
off the
lifting
ground.
your heels, and it's like, it's more of a battle, honestly. I feel like your legs when you're done are sore, you know. And
Well,
so
and it's a technique, just like rail rodding's a technique, and rail rodding's an awkward technique for some people because not everyone gets a lot of practice doing it, and, and it's uncomfortable.
It's
like
hard
I don't
on
want to
you.
be down on my knee for any reason because I'm older and it hurts, and I want to use my core strength. I'll burn out by sitting there with a rod under my shoulder and kind of high shoulder. And rail rodding has its place, and it's time to utilize that technique mainly on a sport boat because the rails are high and it makes sense there, and if you get on the bow of your Parker and you deadboat your fish and you rail rod, that's great, that's your thing. But I want to fight the thing from my core strength and like actually
and your legs
battle
are
that
just
fish
naturally
and,
stronger
and kill it, and you have so much leverage and control over where you are relating to fish dives under the boat, swing that thing around the transom and get to the other side. I don't have to stand up on my 2 feet, readjust my rod, lose maybe a bunch of line and tension.
The mobility.
That was the one thing I noticed the most was, being able to maneuver around the fish. Like, you have to have someone on the sticks driving the boat.
Yep.
But, if you do it enough times and you learn how to do it properly, like, you're going to kill that thing quick.
Yeah, and it's a great, strength to leverage point. Like, I put my sister in the harness, and she can crush tunas in that harness. And she couldn't do that on a rail rod situation. There's no way, but she can put the drag up and put major heat on fish and
sit on it.
You can take somebody that might not have that much experience and give them the fundamentals to utilize that. I mean, it works with your body's mechanics, which is the point.
Super surprised that that's not used more on like
It's
the
just not a
4-pack
cool
charters, right?
I'm always surprised.
Because you get like older people, right? And like rail rodding's not gonna be a good time for them, and it's it's crazy. Like, I think that it is like that's a thing that should be on a lot of charter boats, right? Like, I think some people would be more comfortable in that situation.
Or the worst thing, in my opinion, is seeing a a highly successful charter operation, with their clients winding in their fish out of the rod holder. Like, come on.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
I think I saw
a
Nate's
lot.
clients doing that last night.
I've done it, dude. I've done it plenty of times.
You have to do it from time to time. I get it, but I mean,
It's
thing.
not fishing.
It's not what I paid to go
yeah.
out and do if I'm on a charter. Not that I'm on charters, but
if you're going out to collect meat,
Yeah.
I
I
get
think-
it.
I
But if you
think
want
if
to
you're
sport
commercial,
fish,
if you're commercial, totally fine.
yeah,
Yeah. With
yeah.
I
with
mean,
an LP.
Even commercial fishing. Jazz and I have done a
Yeah.
lot of commercial
Yeah.
fishing for these tunas, and I got 2 harnesses, and we're in the harnesses.
You can hammer
all
on
the
them
time.
way harder.
Yeah.
Way harder.
You might
Yeah.
disagree with me on this, but the one, like, the only little downside that I see of being in the harness is being able to like hang 2 fish, because you got to start driving the boat, right?
It depends how many guys are on board.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's all about the crew and their skill sets, right, and that sort of thing. Like when Jazz and I had commercial fish with Seth, I mean, there was several times where we'd have a triples going, and
Are you all in harnesses at that point?
2 of us at
2 in the
least, yeah, because
harness.
I only have 2.
Yeah.
It's a
Get this
lot.
man another harness.
Yeah, I just need to get another harness. Maybe I don't know if you really have to bring 3 harnesses out. But
Just 3 guys harnessed up on the boat in between fish.
Totally, but I'll tell you what. Like, I
works.
mean, we've had days where we've put 12, 15 fish on the boat. And,
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it and not just crush your body at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm all about
I think case
that.
in point was like Ira in the harness, because
Yeah.
Yeah, Ira
hadn't caught too many like cows at that point, and
He wasn't
that was the
even,
biggest. That
he
was the
wasn't
biggest
even
fish
in
of the
his
day.
Lululemon shorts, dude.
Yeah, I felt like I had to work for that fish a lot more.
You work for it, yeah.
Yeah,
You earn it,
feel like you actually
but it
earn
displaces the strength you need
Yeah.
through your body in a way
Yeah.
that doesn't allow
Yeah.
like fatigue to take
Yeah.
over on one extremity. Where I get really fatigued, like say in my forearms or my shoulders when I'm rail rodding a fish. Versus you're just utilizing your entire core and your legs and your arms and everything together, and you really feel like you won the battle when you finally
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
the gaffs in that fish. It's like a real, in my opinion, like a fishing experience.
You're
right?
also
It's way
using
more
your
satisfying.
$600 rod when you're rail rodding and the half the rod's in the water.
My rods can't go on the rail because I don't have heavy hypalon grips and protection way up to my first guide. There's no place to set my rod on the rail.
Well, you're at least putting pressure on it in the harness because you're actually getting that rod to bend.
Yeah,
Whereas if you're
absolutely.
in the rail, you might be pointed straight at the fish,
You bet.
and
yeah.
then at that point it's just the drag on your reel.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And just how hard you can pull, like you don't realize how much you can actually start to really apply pressure until you get in a harness and actually get like 18, 20 pounds or more drag on a fish that's straight up and down, and it's like, okay,
I think we gotta
I
get,
get it
harness.
now.
It's coming.
Yeah.
We gotta get
I
on.
actually have one.
Do you?
Yeah.
I think people
I
are
need to use
just
it.
so
Use it.
tuned into what the majority people are doing out there fishing, and they're seeing a lot of really successful guys go out and do it this way, and so it's just one of those techniques that doesn't get a lot of front and center attention because it's not really the majority rule as far as going out fishing. But worldwide, any type of big game angling, go to Australia or New Zealand or any other place where there's big game tuna or marlin fishing, that's standard.
Yeah.
To have harnesses on your boat.
And they laugh at using the rail.
Everyone does.
Everyone does that doesn't live here.
I know.
We get so much shit for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a proven technique that's been around for longer than most fishing companies have anything to say about,
Yeah.
So, I got into it because I really like IGFA stuff.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes hand in hand with that. Not that I'm like trying to set IGFA records or anything like that, but it's just sort of goes into like a historical style of battling big fish. And I want to stand on my 2 feet and pull as hard as I can and be as mobile as I possibly can. And it's really easy to pop in and out of that harness when you have it all set up. So, the key elements for somebody that's trying to go out and get into it is, get your angler that's going to be in the harness fitted for it so you're not stumbling and fumbling when it comes time to hook up. I think people get turned off by that. You got, 2 separate belts that need to be adjusted to your waist size. And, there's a few things that you can check off your list prior to getting into that situation where you're actually hooked up that allow that person to just jump in the harness and get to it, and you can just kill those things when you got somebody that knows what they're doing. I mean, Ira's perfect example, and you first time in a harness, as soon as you get the rhythm, you're like, okay, here we go. Knock this thing.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah.
You caught your sword in the harness, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, my friend Jay that came with me did, and Jay's from Australia, and he grew up fishing in harnesses in Australia, and super good angler in general, and he just got right in that thing, and it was a blast, And again, sword fishing. I mean, that's another thing. Like, I'm not going to go, the charter program, press the button on the electric reel to catch the swordfish. I mean, it doesn't do it for me from a fishing standpoint. I want to go out for the battle. That's what I'm there for, Like, I want to catch the fish and, like, have the pictures and the meat and all that stuff's cool too. But, like, first and foremost, I want to, like, get into a harness and say that I actually battled that fish. And, my rod never was in a rod holder or on a rail.
That was a big fish too.
Yeah, that last.
How was that fight?
It was solid, man. That fish was really tough. We killed it pretty quick though. I think, like, all in all, from the time we hooked it till we gaffed it was just under an hour or so.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
How was the hook set on it?
It was hooked. Yeah, it was hooked pretty deep. It was kind of like hooked right in that transition between, like, the mouth and, like, going into its stomach almost.
Yeah.
And it was hooked straight up, like, into the top jaw. So it was in, like, some really heavy meat. Like, I sat and pulled on it as hard as I could when the fish got on the boat, just to see if I could rip anything or make that hook come out.
Yeah,
I feel like that's the other thing about the harness though. You can keep a constant pressure on maybe a little bit more easily than on the rail, for sure.
You can definitely stay a lot smoother in your pressure than, you're not, you can definitely, you can make up slack line a lot faster because you're just squared up with the rod and you're focused on, turning the handle rather than trying to get a comfortable position and, things like that for sure. Ideal in the harness. And I fish rods with a really soft tip. A lot of rail rods are really stiff, a lot of backbone kind of through the tip, which allows you to apply a lot of leverage but doesn't give you a lot of good, like, head shake. I'm not sure what the word I'm looking for is, but
absorption.
You're looking for a soft rod tip with fish that have big head shakes, like bluefin have massive head shakes. Swordfish obviously can do a lot of crazy head shaking and jumping and stuff like that, so having that softer rod tip with a stand-up harness is pretty ideal. You definitely also, just for sword fishing, I want to be able to really see that bite. A lot of guys fish with really stiff rods and it's hard to see that action in the tip. Yeah, that fish was fun though, man. Like, my whole theory now with swordfish is you either have them hooked or you don't. So my whole thing is, once I get that weight off,
put pressure on
I'm going straight up and putting serious amount of drag on that fish, like right up to what I think I can tolerate with any type of, big game style fishing. Like, I'm going to pull on tunas as hard as I can. The hook's coming out or it's staying in, one or the other. I'm not going to expedite that process for hours and then let it pull out later. I either got him or I don't.
It's coming in or it's coming off.
I'm pulling on that thing and we're either going to pull the hook on it or we're going to get it. It's either hooked right or it's not, No. I fought a fish on Halloween. I hooked a swordfish that I fought for close to 3 hours. And the reason I fought it for so long was because it was hooked in the pectoral fin and it was wrapped around the body, like a full wrap around the body. And then it was hooked somewhere around the pec fin. And it was doing these huge, really wide circles. And I couldn't really get any leverage on it. Like, I was pulling on it as hard as I thought that I could without, like, really maybe breaking something. And it would come up and do these really big circles and it'd end up on the surface. And then by the time it would make its circle, it would come way underneath the boat. And I couldn't close this circle. And we sat and watched this fish, like, within 50 feet of the boat, do these huge revolutions over and over and over again. And it finally came up on the surface, and my buddy drove and kind of broke the gap between it and the fish, and I was winding up and just getting tight, and it was coming almost right to the gaff. And right at the last minute, I got really tight, put a lot of heat on it, and it rolled the fish out of the loop that it was in, and I watched the hook just come out of it. It didn't tear out, it just fell out,
Yeah.
The fish just rolled. It did a complete, like, rollover, and the hook just fell out.
You had the thing, like, lassoed.
It was lassoed, and I'd worn a big hole where the hook was. You could see this, like, tear.
Yeah.
And what do you do there? I don't really know. You just sometimes
what can you do?
They're gonna best you, and I just watched that fish swim away, and it was in the dark, and it was rough. It got windy and rough in the late afternoon.
You told me about that.
And it was just heartbreaking.
I think that was the day I was supposed to go with Ryan.
It was. Yeah.
You
exactly.
grinded. I was so stoked when I saw you guys caught that one.
Oh man, yeah, and that was the last day that I had to fish for the season before I went into selling Christmas trees. So it was like
swordfish and Christmas trees.
You got to be multifaceted, man.
Yeah.
You know? And so, that was literally the last day I had before the boat went away for the rest of that season. And Jay, my buddy, rolled into town for a wedding, and he had one day on the back end of his trip, and I was like, well, if you want to go try, we can go try one more day. And so that was the day we caught that fish, and it worked out really good. It was just a huge success huge victory for me and my small little personal program in fishing there.
Yeah, man.
That's awesome.
That's such an epic fish.
Yeah, sword fishing is... There should be a disclaimer on getting into that.
And the best part was
you'll spend a lot of time.
Yeah,
you'll spend a lot of time, and the level of just like anxiety after you lose one at the boat.
Well, I put it in perspective. I fished 13 days for swordfish, and I had 6 bites, and I hooked 3 fish, and I landed 1.
That's a lot of bites.
That's a lot of bites.
That's good.
I talked to people that fish for a similar amount of days for no bites. So
I fished this year was horrible for.
Well, the other thing is, I mean, it's cool that so many people are into it, but when you have 20 boats fishing one zone, your chances go way down.
They definitely it becomes more of like a lottery ticket at that point.
It's
right?
already such a gamble.
My theory is there's a lot of places to fish swordfish.
There's a lot of places to fish
and there's
swordfish.
a couple places that are very concentrated with boats. Yeah. And if you get out of those zones, you have still great shots at them given the conditions,
and you're dealing with a highly migratory fish. One week there might be a lot of fish in a zone on the moon phase or whatever, and then there might be a day where you're out with 40 boats or 20 boats, and there might be one fish in that whole zone. And you might only get that one bite. I mean, I had a few of those bites where I just the textbook bite, rod's going slack, all the good all the right things are happening, and then it just disappeared,
Yeah.
And I don't really know if there was something that I could have done to capitalize on that other than what I was doing. It's really hard to stay confident in that fishing because there's so many unanswered questions. I learn a lot when I put in like those brackets of time, when I get like, I didn't fish 13 days in a row. I fished those days over the course of like maybe 5 weeks. However, my theory was to, change my tactics, and as soon as I do get hooked up, pull as freaking hard as I can once that weight comes off and get to that weight as quick as possible. I'm not going to go out there and let my rod go slack and just let the buoy lay over and hang out and freaking let that happen for extended periods of time. If I know I'm bit and it's happening, like we're getting the weight to us as fast as possible, and then we're about to get down and dirty and pull as hard as we can. And it's either going to happen or it's not. And if it doesn't, get back to fishing. And if you don't, you might waste 3 or 4 hours pulling on something that was barely hooked, and you're probably going to lose it when it gets close to the boat, and then it's really going to hurt. So
last year I think I lost 4, like relatively close. I saw 3 of the 4.
Yeah, so I mean,
and then the year before I got 2, and that was like, I think that was like the beginner's luck deal. Like the first time I ever swordfished, I caught one.
I just like the whole.
I hate you.
I mean, that's the dumb luck of it, right? Like,
but it's a curse though, because it gave me this impression, like subconsciously, that it's. I was like, dude, this is cake, and then it's just gotten harder and harder.
I mean, it is a relatively simple fishery, right? Like if you break it down, it's really not that big of a deal. It's a big dropper loop and a weight and a bait, and it's like put it down at the right depth, you might hang one.
Once you're hooked, right?
Yeah, that's when things really. That's when you start really questioning: are we? Is there something I could be doing better?
Yeah.
Am I doing this the right way? Is there something I should be doing wrong? And so that's putting in the time, develop the theories on what you are confident in, which for me is, get that weight off and start pulling on the fish hard. And that is opposite from how a lot of guys fish. I mean, a lot of guys sit there and just
super light drag.
Don't put any real heat on them. Let the weight fight the fish. I mean, I got guys who I know who are successful fishing for them. They'll drop the weight back down underneath them and just let them swim around with it. And that's great if that's what you're confident in. But for me,
way too much ADD for that.
Yeah, I want to kill the thing.
If I'm bid, I want to start reeling.
Let's fight this thing.
Yeah,
for sure. I don't know. I have so much to learn in that fishery, and I think we all do as far as that goes, but I nerd out on the technical details. Like I love making the leaders, and I love rigging the baits, and I like the whole process of, you know, setting up my gear so that I'm confident in it, you know, and it doesn't really matter what anyone else thinks at that time. But if you start to develop some rigging techniques and some ways to fish for them that make you feel like you're going to be successful, I think that's a huge factor with any fishing. But you know, the hardest thing to go out and do with that swordfish is like, I'm confident that bait's fishing down there at 1,000 feet or 900 feet. And I'm confident that if we actually hook one, we're going to be doing what I think is going to be the best thing to do to catch it, right?
Right.
There's so many things that are hard to gain that level of confidence in, so.
Yeah. Sword fishing, man. It's like the biggest, it requires some of the biggest investment on so many levels, but the payoff is just so rad.
I think it's
like,
also,
it's addicting.
It's so hard to, like, who knows what the right technique is. I think it's one of the things that makes it so difficult is that the opportunities are so few and far between.
Totally.
Like with our bluefin, and we're so fortunate to
get a lot of practice.
We get a lot of practice, and the
you get a lot of
been
time to
good.
screw that up and learn from your mistakes.
Yeah, so. we've all lost plenty of bluefin, but with the sword thing, it's like you have so few opportunities. Like, how do you dial it in?
That's just it.
Yeah.
And the guys who fish in places and regions where they get 3, 4, 5 opportunities every time they go out, or you know, maybe even more.
The guys in Florida.
Those are the guys that figured it out. Yeah.
In Texas.
Yeah, but even then, like, talking to some of the guys over there, like, they're fishing.
They have way more current.
Well, they're fishing differently
way more
too.
Current, and they're fishing a lot of the times with LPs, and sometimes they're fishing 3 rods, and they've got 3 baits out, and they've you know, they've got a well-oiled crew. They're able to use harpoons. I mean, that was another factor. You know, I learned a lot from different people on Instagram. I mean, that's a great asset for being able to network with some of these guys. This one particular guy named Brian Hensel, he fishes out of somewhere on the East Coast. I forget exactly where, but they get him. I mean, him and his operation get him. They crush him. And he talked me into a lot of different things that I was not even considering, as far as rigging baits and just how to pull on the fish, and the amount of drag that they were putting on their fish when they would get the weight off really is what got me to change my tactic. And as soon as I did some of that stuff, my success happened, you know. And so anyways, I don't know, I've hooked 3 swordfish on 3 completely different styles of deep dropping, and I've, you know, lost a few. I don't want to say that there's one way that outrules the rest. We live in a place where there's swordfish in so many potential spots, right?
Yeah.
Have you hooked one on the strip baits?
I did, yeah. And we actually
Here?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, and I actually they make this bait, they make this rubber eel that's long. It's like 24 inches long, and it comes in a few different colors, and it has a double J-hook rig built into it.
That's sick.
And I bought one like a few years ago, kind of like, you know, same principle as like how some people use the California flyer, like it's our backup plan when we run out of flyers. You know, like if I run out of squids or something like that, I'll buy this eel and put this thing down there. First time I put it out, we hooked and caught a swordfish on this big purple stupid rubber eel.
Nice.
And it was hooked like 2 J-hooks in its face. It wasn't even in its mouth. But the thing, I mean, we put it down there, just the same bite. You would always see that swat bite and then slack line, and we were on this big rubber plastic eel, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So I think you could put a lot of things down there that a swordfish is going to eat, you know.
We need to step the game up for foamer fishing too. I'm going to start, I got some tricks up my sleeve for next year.
What do you mean?
I got like a little, I got this little duck, right? It's like a bass lure.
Yeah.
I want to switch out the trebles on that. I want to get one on the duck.
Yeah, the duck's
I want to get
mandatory.
one on the, have you seen, there's snake lures.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah.
there's days that stuff's going to get
Nate's
just
Nate's
pineapple.
big on the Nate engineered a cucumber flyer.
Dude, it works. Yeah, the cucumber flyer, dude.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a prototype. It's not as good as Jazz's, but if you're vegan,
Well, no, we talked about it, and
you bail on the salad and you got a cucumber.
that's just the
send
thing.
it.
We're so lucky to have all these opportunities, and like, dude, if it's gonna foam for 2 months, like, why not have fun with it? And
When
when
we cast a rubber ducky into that thing.
Yeah.
when we fished with Evan down in Baja, he said
Yeah.
the same thing. Like, hey, you can go anywhere in the world and catch a fish on a plug. Like, you can go throw a service iron anywhere in the world and catch a fish.
Yeah.
Like, the fishery down here is so good. Why don't we have some fun with it?
Yeah.
We were throwing like spooks for yellowtail,
Yeah. Oh,
like
yeah.
just totally unconventional stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what keeps the love and like passion for fishing alive.
100%.
Is like, dude, let's have fun with it.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
test
like the rubber trout, bass baits, you know?
For
Like,
sure.
Let's get some of that out there.
Yeah.
and it'll probably work.
Probably. For sure.
Yeah, or you're going to snag one and it's going to suck.
Yeah, but you do that on any lure anyways.
Yeah.
Totally.
Any metal lure you throw in the foam, you're probably gonna snag one.
Yeah. Hopefully it's a duck.
I would love to see you catch
I'm
one
ready
on
to
the
see
duck.
the rubber duck.
That's
So
lucky.
speaking of lures, Jazz, you want to go over some of the features of the new model?
Sure.
Yeah.
As far as a quick timeline for the history of this whole thing, when did we start using the Yummy?
Like
In
yours, like your prototype?
No.
Oh, 2015.
In 2015?
Nino.
El Nino.
And the Bluefin showed up in 2014?
I believe so.
I think they showed up in 15.
In 15?
Yeah,
I think
maybe,
it was 15.
Yeah,
Was it
when,
15?
when finally went
Okay.
out and actually caught
You'll
some.
have everyone will be arguing with you about this, but
I want to
Yeah.
say it was 15.
So 2015 and then 2016, the Yummy was used
Right.
heavily, and then started to get into the dead flyers
Mm-hmm.
shortly after that, 2017, 2018. And as far as the features and stuff on the new flyer compared to the first one, that one floats.
Cool.
And it's got the ability to be slow trolled, so that's kind of a cool factor. Is if you don't have a ton of wind, you can float the thing out there. And a lot of our customers had contacted us who go on a party boat, and they only have either like one or two kites going out there, and then you have another 20-30 guys who don't have the opportunity to fly a kite, and they're trying to fly line a sardine on some 60 and 80 pound.
So it's like a backpack.
you can
rig.
fish
Yeah,
it down
yeah.
swell. Yeah,
It's
Put
a
a piece of
backpack-
130 fluoro on
it's
it
a
and
backpack
float
rig
it out
that's
there,
really
you know?
clean.
Yeah.
So
and this is just strictly the treble.
strictly the treble. We
Ryan,
got
put that up.
That's a good element to discuss.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing
Yeah.
floats with the right hook rig.
yeah,
Specifically a 7.0 treble hook.
5/0.
Sorry, 5/0.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Anything heavier, you're going to start to get some like neutral buoyancy /
Yeah.
shrinkage.
that tail will start to droop if you go into like the 6 and 7.0 range. It doesn't really matter if you're kite fishing, but when you're going for a drift, you're gonna want to use that 5/0 hook.
Gotcha.
And
So if you're gonna actively fish it with wind and
Yeah.
be moving, you can kind of change your hook size. But if you want to
Yeah.
do the drift deal
Yeah,
or backpack deal, use the 5.0.
And that was the other
exactly.
huge thing,
Yeah.
like the way that you have the wings on this one. Just as we've adapted and learned, like a lot more people are rigging their wings Delta style, is what
Exactly.
everyone's calls
Yeah,
it.
Yeah.
that's how I rig.
And you know, one, if you're fishing an actual dead flyer, it helps so the wings don't get so beat up.
yeah,
But it still gets equally or more bites. So why not, you know?
Well, and
do
it's a lot
this?
more hydrodynamic too. If
Yeah.
you're gonna walk that real
Yeah.
flyer
Yeah.
around or this one, I mean, you've just got a lot more hydrodynamics to it when it's going across the surface of the water, and it's a lot less to get into the mouth of a fish. You
Yeah.
know,
Right.
rig your wings straight out. Now you've created this huge profile
Yeah.
that's got to get into the mouth of a fish. Obviously, a big one's no problem can crush the
Yeah.
thing, but
Yeah.
I've had a lot of baits get crushed and not have a hook end up in a fish, and
Well,
I
dude,
think
we caught a
sometimes that's
30
because
pounder.
of your wings being too far open.
Yeah.
Yeah, catch small ones on this thing.
Yeah.
We've caught little ones on it.
This
too.
it's the same like breakaway system too.
yes, yeah. So on here, we have a tube on top of the head. So if you're going to be doing kite fishing, you're going to run it through here, and then if you're going to drift it or troll it, you're going to run it through here.
Oh, you can go in through the.
Yeah, go through the tip of the nose.
Okay.
But yeah,
like if you're going to do a backpack rig, you'd go through the nose.
yeah,
I think that's
Exactly.
great,
Or
dude.
if you're
Especially
gonna-
like you were saying for the sport boat guys or private boat too. Like if you're fishing
if you
the
have
kite,
a kite
and you can
going downwind,
throw that down swell. Or the other
have that
thing,
thing going up swell.
Yeah,
when-
that's exactly.
when Dwayne came in and a lot of we started to fish them the same way. When you start to run over that school and you turn the boat straight into the wind and keep going until you stop running over that school,
Yep.
and then that entire body of fish is down below the boat and you're gonna drift back on top of it. When you start driving up swell, like, dude, throw one of these out. It's probably
Absolutely.
gonna get smashed.
100%.
You know?
Get smashed, get up above it, the other one gets bit.
Exactly, dude.
Yeah.
If you're trying to put fish in the boat, like,
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely get more baits and hooks in the water is ideal, and that
Yeah.
just gives you another reason to have that thing rigged and just something you can float out. Even if you got a guy that just hooked one on the kite, have somebody fly that thing out of the back and just float it away from the boat while you're bumping in gear to catch up to that guy's fish or whatever. You got this one spread out behind you, you're going to probably get a double in the right situation every time, you know?
So if this thing's rigged like to fly line off the back, right? Or like a backpack style.
Yeah.
If you're drifting and you want to get some movement on it, how does it swim with a little bit of reeling? Does it still swim? Does the nose go down or does it stay?
No. It'll come up on top of the water and kind of plane.
Rad. So it kind of like swims.
That would be
higher.
relative to like the speed of your winding, obviously.
Yeah.
I would,
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
assume you just put it like kind of into a slow, steady
Right,
wind and get
right.
the thing to come up and just kind of walk
Just
on
some
the
movement,
surface. But
yeah.
I wouldn't
And
like put my rod tip down and start
No,
grinding
no,
on
no.
it. you know?
It kind of depends. If it's glassy, it's obviously it's going to run a lot cleaner. If it's kind of choppy, that thing, it might cut through and go into the water a bit. So
One thing I've noticed, like if it's rough and you have like good wind and you're trying to skip it, say like 6, 7, 8 knots, occasionally it will try to flip upside down in like rough water. But if it's like at all, you know, on the calmer side or not super chopped up, like you can skip that thing pretty hard, you know.
Awesome.
Which is what I prefer to do when I'm, you know, putting it over a group of fish, you know, get that massive reaction explosion, you know.
Yeah.
But that's what's cool about it. You can skip it into a group of fish and then you can stop the boat and let it sit in there if you want, like it's a dead flyer. It's really versatile, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an awesome design. The wings on it are badass and they feel like bulletproof.
Yeah, and it's not going to get crushed on a missed bite. You can drop it right back into the fish again, you know, and not have that flyer have to come back in and reset all your
Don't
gear.
you love when you
That's
get
such
a
a
bite,
big
you're like,
advantage.
Yeah.
Get in the gyro.
There's been several days where we get that thing rolled on, wind it up in the air, shit, we missed it, drop it right back down, get
It's
another
perfect.
bite on it.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes that works with a dead flyer, but a lot of times those come up just freaking wrecked.
That's
right?
a huge deal, especially if you only get 1 or 2 opportunities in the
Yep.
day, man. If
Yep.
you have to switch that bait out and get the kite in, get a new bait on.
Or if you're a
like,
sport boat guy
yeah.
that's trying to accommodate 20 plus guys and get them all into a fish
Yeah.
for the day, like you can't afford the time it takes to reset all that all day long.
I've seen the guy. Did you give some to the guys in Spain too? You sent some product to them, or
Gibraltar?
maybe they bought them.
for the first ones, yes.
Yeah, 'cause I've
on,
seen them
on that
fishing
one. I
it.
haven't. No.
That's the other thing. There's flying fish everywhere in the world. Like this
Exactly.
is not just a SoCal.
Anywhere there's a tuna fishery that has you know, fish that are solid in size, and I mean that's a potential game changer lure for people. Problem is, a lot of regions just don't know how to execute kite fishing.
Yeah.
And so that's where this one becomes a lot more versatile in the fact that, you know, a green stick guy could skip that thing on a green stick.
Right.
You know, a guy in Hawaii could put it on his long rigger and, you know, put it through a dolphin school. Or, you know, the guys who want to fish the kite, you know, I get a lot of guys in Hawaii asking me about it. And, you know, the problem is it's just kite fishing there is not something that a lot of people do, and so there's not a lot of access for helium and balloons, and there's not a lot of information in general. And like, how do I go out and start kite fishing? That's would be some good snippets to actually put together, just the basics of how do I rig a kite and put it out and get a bait underneath it into a spot where I might actually get a fish to bite it.
Yeah.
If you could get that out there in a way where people could understand it easily, there's probably a lot of regions that would start to adapt that technique.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, I mean it's so effective. Especially, I mean,
it's like the most fun.
it's also the most fun
It's
to
so
blow
fun
up.
to
Visual
watch,
bites are
man.
nothing compares.
It's probably the cleanest type of presentation that you could have.
Yeah, everything's above the water.
It's
You have no terminal tackle for that fish to see, and it has
and
no
it's
reason
heavy,
not to
it's
eat
heavy
it.
tackle.
Yeah.
Heavy tackle that's really, really clean.
Yeah.
So
So as of right now, what would be for our audience, like what's the best way for them to purchase one now?
through CaliforniaFlyerCo.com.
Through the site?
Yeah.
Cool.
And then going forward in 2024, we should have quite a few more tackle shops. For the last few years, our production has been pretty capped, and we've only had, I don't know, probably 7-8 shops. Whoa. Uh-oh.
Technical difficulty.
Technical.
Oh, you're not gonna be able to fix that.
All right, we had some technical difficulties. Ricky dropped his beer again,
We are back.
but we're back. Jazz, so if somebody wanted to get the new flyer, the best method to grab one would be what?
through CaliforniaFlyerCo.com, and then retailers throughout California. And we were briefly talking about how we were kind of capped on our production prior to 2023, but we've got plenty of product now, so we'll probably be in a lot more shops.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's
And this
great.
is not just a plug because we know Jazz. This is a plug because this is a product you should have on your boat. Like,
And we literally all use it in this room.
and anyone who fishes a kite in SoCal, like if you should have this bait on your boat, and we all do.
Yeah.
And it works.
It works really nice.
I have no interest in the company, and I wholeheartedly believe in that thing.
Yeah.
Literally. I mean, I won't leave to go tuna fishing without it. I'd turn around and go get it.
Oh yeah, and you're not gonna smell like dead flyer for the whole day.
It's pretty nice not to deal with them when you don't have to, you know?
Something that I wanted you to get into, because I think it's super important, and you just do a really good job at it, and I think more people should follow suit. The way that you take care of your fish before they even come on the boat,
Totally.
I think is huge, and I think from what I see, maybe you take like a little bit of it from the guys in Australia or Hawaii, where they're like make sure that fish is dead before they even bring it on the boat, so it doesn't come on and start beating itself up.
Yeah, and that's something that's hard for some programs to do, right? Like I would always prefer to dispatch a fish before it comes into my boat for a couple reasons. Mainly, I don't want the thing to bruise, and if you really just think about the simple side of it, like no tuna has ever felt gravity before, and so you bring this live animal that's got a pretty delicate meat structure into your boat alive, and it's flopping around or beating itself up on the deck, like you're immediately doing quite a bit of damage to that meat, which is just going to limit the shelf life of it. And for me, it's all about the quality. I'm like trying to achieve the absolute like best color, best texture for myself, just from like my own nerd standpoint about like having a really awesome, and I also really like sashimi platters and, sharing that stuff. And so I want it to be something that I can have in my fridge for as long as possible. Obviously you get a lot of meat out of a big tuna, right? And making it last fresh is really, element one. And that starts right when you gaff the fish. And so, a lot of guys, the first reaction is just swing that thing in the boat as quick as you can. If you've got two gaffs in it or a gaff that's in a place where it's supposed to be, it's just an extra few seconds to get a bat out and hit the thing a few times and dispatch it before it comes over the rail of your boat, gently set it on the deck. That alone will change the quality of your fish long term by maybe days, who knows. And so for me, I would rather, just take that time at the boat side. And I like to just slow down, stop everything. A lot of guys are like, let's rush to get another bait out, throw that fish in the corner. If I caught one and it's gaffed on the side of my boat, as far as I'm concerned, my fishing day has like been made. I'm not trying to sit there and put 20 fish on the boat. And even if we are in a commercial setting where we are, still it doesn't take that long to dispatch them and get them bleeding and put them somewhere gently, This year I'm even going up another notch. I just got a pretty badass piece of like closed cell memory foam that's going to be on the deck of my boat for like bringing fish on, and literally they're going to come over the rail and get set on a piece of memory foam, and they're never going to hit anything hard, even if they're dead. And so, those are all just like little subtleties right out of the gate that can change your fish quality. But there's the other aspect of bringing in a big tuna to your boat that's alive. It's freaking dangerous, It can be. I mean, I've watched a guy take a gaff into his knee from another boat one day because they were bringing in this super hot fish and it flopped out of the way, and it was three guys pulling it over the rail, and the one guy's gaff came out and he slipped and pulled the gaff right into his own knee. And it was like,
I've thought about that with a couple gaffs and seen people's hands just like so close to another gaff in the fish.
I got gaffed last year or 2 years ago.
Ricky got gaffed, baby.
it happens, man. Even I've had it happen where I've slipped and gotten a solid poke through my palm of my hand before, and I was just trying, not even, it's just your adrenaline's peaked, people are excited, you're fired up, you got a dead fish, let's bring this thing in the boat, slow down and take a minute to just dispatch it, a few good hits with a bat, then bring it on board and start the next process.
Yeah, I'd like you to go into that if you want to.
Ideally, in that situation, I mean, a lot of times, so like my boat is awesome, but there are downsides like any boat. I don't really have a boat that I can just like dump 5-gallon buckets of water on the deck and let it wash overboard. I have problems where my boat drains into my bilge. I don't really want a big mess of blood and stuff like that all over the deck of my boat, because it creates a lot of time for me to like spend there wiping it all up. So some boats are great. You can just like dump buckets of water all over the deck, wash stuff off. Doesn't really matter, you know, commercial setting, bring the fish on the boat and bleed it on the deck. Personally, for me, I like to get a rope through their mouth and bleed them and let them hang on the side of the boat. And just let them hang out there for a few minutes, resort your gear, get your kite in, get your stuff out of the way, then bring the fish on the boat and get some really good pictures of it. You know, take a few extra minutes and get some good pictures and some good shots of it. And then I immediately go into gutting and gilling the fish. And once I'm done with that, on my boat, I like to go back in the water with it, with that rope through its mouth again, and just let it wash out, give it a few minutes to just sit there and get my program figured out where I'm going, look at my plotter, get back on track and get my kite stuff ready to go again. And then right when I'm about ready to start fishing again, the last thing I'll do is throw that fish after it's been bled, killed and gutted and gilled into ice and bury it, you know?
Yeah.
And being real careful with it the whole time. I never let them slam or drop or any of that. I usually like to just carefully get them in my kill bag, break my ice and bury them like that. And, you know, ideally let them sit on ice for at least overnight, you know? That's really the minimum, you know?
I think there's a huge benefit to also bleeding your fish in the water that a lot of people don't realize. I don't really do that. I don't know if you do, Nate, or...
I do sometimes.
But
It keeps your whole boat clean.
It keeps your boat clean, and when you bleed a fish, once it's in the boat, I don't know if anyone ever notices how quickly that blood coagulates.
It coagulates very
And
fast, and they'll stop bleeding.
And it
to
stops
some degree.
bleeding, and you're not pulling as much of the blood out of the meat as you possibly could.
And you'll see it on the cutting board when you do finally go break your fish down.
Yeah.
You'll notice that, you know, and we've all seen situations where you end up with blood coming, you know, kind of, you know, percolating through the meat tissue, right?
Yeah.
Getting rid of that blood's really, you know, ideal and pretty mandatory for like a long-term high quality piece of fish. But dispatching it without bruising the meat, first and foremost, especially from like a commercial standpoint. And the time I spent in Hawaii is really where I opened up my eyes to dispatching fish before they come over the rail of the boat. Again, not possible on a sport boat, not possible on some charter operations, not possible when you got 6 people hooked up in like a wide open yellowfin bite. These are situations that are reserved for the right boat with the right group of people that have, you know, the mindset to say, I really, you know, want to care for this one fish. And if we get into another situation where we catch another one, great. But like I take them one at a time, you know, and just slow everything down. And it might only be 15 minutes, but for some people that's 15 minutes too long and they can't do it.
Well, you're spending all this money to go catch this fish. You might as well get the best product out of it.
And for me, it's not about that. It's about the whole situation of going out, hunting for it, bringing it back, and then sharing it with people, you know. And I don't really care to share fish that isn't really high quality, and mainly because I'm the one who's usually enjoying it or serving it for friends, or Jazz and I are doing a big sushi party at my house or whatever, and I'm just trying to like continually break the bar on quality and using my like social media presence as a platform to showcase that so that people can either talk shit or take it and use it for themselves. And more often than not, people are really stoked on those tips and tricks and the things that I've learned from my own trial and error and the time I spent in Hawaii, where quality is the first and foremost most important thing over anything else. You know, like fish buyers don't want fish that are bruised, or have cloudy eyes, or aren't gilled and gutted, or not properly bled, or have any bruising. All that stuff cuts into the end of the day when you're selling something, right? And so I learned a lot there and just transitioned it into kind of an everyday practice. If you're really on your game and you really have your tools in order, you know, doing an ikejime, running a wire through their spinal cord column is the next and absolute greatest thing you can do. You know, it's pretty common knowledge now. It's been spread around so much lately. People are starting to pick up on that. It's a technique that's a little bit difficult to figure out. It's really easy for a beginner to go in through the tail of any fish with that wire, because when you cut the tail and break it, it's just like this very obvious canal where you put it in. And a lot of people have a misconception that the wire is going actually through the middle of the spine. It's not. The neural canal is actually on the top of the spine, and it's a small channel. It's not through the middle of the spine. And so that's why breaking the tail open, you can really see where that's, you know, that wire needs to go in. And I mean, most people at this point, I think, kind of realize what you're doing, but you're essentially destroying the nervous system of the fish, and you're mitigating any damage due to like post-mortem adrenaline and like neurocircuitry, right? So you're killing the brain of the fish and you're shutting down the signals that are being sent through the meat, which are causing, you know, spikes in adrenaline, spikes in cortisol levels. All those things are degrading the quality of your meat even after you've killed the fish. So if you can run a wire up their spinal cord and shut all that down, you're really turning off all of those signals, which are creating heat, spiked levels of adrenaline and cortisol, things that are you know, going to continually damage the meat even once it's gotten into your bag full of ice. And then I get a lot of people you know, saying, well, I could never bleed a fish over the side of my boat because of the sharks we have in our region. I get it. It's not something that people can do everywhere in the world. We have a fishery where we don't have a shark problem so bad where you can't let your fish hang out off the side of your boat. Occasionally a mako shows up or something, but I mean, once a year maybe or something. Like, it's not like we're losing fish to sharks because they're over the side of the boat. But for instance, we'd commercial fish. We might have 3 or 4 fish and we're fighting a few fish, and those 3 or 4 fish that we've already caught are hanging on mouth ropes or tail ropes, gutted and gilled off the side of the boat, and they're getting down to the temperature of the water, which in most cases for us is like 65 to 70 degrees in the summertime. That's 30 degrees colder than what that fish is internally. And then you put it in your ice, you extend the longevity of your ice, you extend the quality of your fish, which gives you a longer time to give it out to friends and use it in your fridge or whatever you're going to do with it from that point. But it really starts with killing them before they come over the boat. Or if you can't do that, get them killed quickly. Like, get them on the boat and try and put them somewhere soft if you can, or gently, and whack that thing on the head as hard as you can and shut down all that movement. And then from there, bleed it, gut it and gill it, get a wire run down the spinal cord if you can. Those are all things that, you know, are mandatory on my boat, and just slowing down is key. And it makes everyone kind of appreciate the moment, you know?
I'm super against the just rapid fire, kill as many as you can, so you have a picture with 6 big bluefin on the boat and they all have, like, you know, ponga deck rot, rash, and it's just like, why?
And there's
a
lot
like
of days,
it's gonna taste like
Yeah.
shit.
There's a lot of days where spending that extra 10 or 15 minutes to properly dispatch and process that fish for the ice bag or whatever doesn't impede on your fishing success. You're going to get right back out into it and kill another one.
I mean, you guys are best case scenario, like, you guys go catch 12 in a day and you're taking care of every single one of those fish.
And you're organized because it forces you to slow down.
Ryan's just a very organized person in general. But
I mean, OCD is a great factor in fishing, you know, highly organized and obsessive over the details. And for me, I really like when all that stuff's just where it needs to be and it's all in place, because it makes you more efficient, which makes you more successful.
But it's awesome that you use your platform to kind of like advocate for that stuff. I know you are definitely a big influence in myself, and I'm sure a bunch of other people, and like, if you're fishing for fun, like, don't kill fish just because you want to kill fish, like, especially you're going to be giving that stuff away. And quite honestly, like, I don't really like eating bluefin that's been frozen for a month. It's not anywhere near as
frozen
good.
At all.
Frozen at all, right? And you showed, like, if you were to freeze it, I remember seeing something on your Instagram, like, you have this special paper that you wrap around it. Like, that stuff is so key, because how many people go on trips and have a banger trip, and then a year and a half later they're looking in their freezer and 100 pounds of bluefin is just rotten.
Exactly.
You know, and like, why'd you kill that fish?
Or the other side of it is oh my God, it's been 4 or 5 days since we caught that fish, and I've still got, like, you know, big chunks of it in my fridge, and at that point it's sort of not as great as it was a few days ago. Let's smoke it. Let's can it. My theory on that, right when I go into cutting a fish, say I catch one and get to my house and the next day I'm going to fillet it up, I'm going to dedicate the pieces I'm going to smoke and cut, and that's all going to happen right now while it's fresh as possible. I don't sit there and wait for it to start kind of turning colors or get a little bit of funk on it. And I'm like, well, let's throw it in the smoker, you know, like, that's good. It's fine. It works. It's great if that's your jam. But for me, I'm like, let's take this product and utilize it while it's as fresh as possible, even if you're going to can it or smoke it or freeze it. And I mean, I did do a handful of fish where I froze big chunks of it, kind of more of as an experiment. Even with the paper, I defrosted some of that stuff. It still turns color. It gets dark.
It's
you know?
not the same.
It's not the same. Unfortunately, you really can never freeze a piece of fresh tuna and have a really high-end piece of sushi grade fish down the road. However, that fish frozen fresh like that, down the road, that's a great piece of fish to smoke or can at that time as well. You can definitely stretch out that side of it by freezing the fish, but again, don't wait till it's 5 or 6 or 7 days old in your fridge to do that. Do it right away.
Yeah.
You know?
Shit that smoked is just smoked shit.
Yeah. And you can cover up anything with a good Traeger recipe and some smoke, you know, or
the
whatever.
right pellets.
The
bacon pellets.
Signature blend pellets. You know, you can make any funk go away.
Yeah.
So I think you know, it's really important to keep that level of respect, because I think the fish we're catching here are really special and unique, and I hope we have like decades of these fish returning, but just like we all know, I mean, maybe there's going to be a cycle change, and we're not going to see these big bluefin like we did, or maybe it'll be just like years where you're really digging away for a handful of fish, and we're going to look back on these years and be like, man, we really had it good, or maybe this is just the new normal and it's going to be great fishing moving forward for a long time, which I hope. However, nonetheless, like, just take a minute to really enjoy that fish, take those really good pictures of it, let the person that caught it really enjoy that moment, and then really enjoy the reward of it down the road by being able to share something that's like gonna blow everyone's mind when you bust it out for sushi party, you know?
I think that's one of the most rewarding things of being a fisherman, and I know Nate likes to cook, and obviously you make phenomenal plates.
Thanks,
with Jazz, and being able to like feed your friends and your family these insane plates of sushi or sashimi,
and that's where it comes full circle
so
for
rewarding.
Me. That's for me, that's like literally more than half of the enjoyment I get out of going out to go fishing. Is like, we're coming home with it, we got the goods, baby, you know, let's start putting the calls
call
together,
your friends,
let's get the boys over, let's get the crew at the house, we're gonna throw it down. We all know what that feels like. That's the best of it all, right?
It's the best.
And so you know, taking that extra time to enjoy the moment, take those great pictures, really dispatch your fish properly. And I mean, if you're on a boat where you really can't do that over the side of the rail or in the water, just, you know, try to avoid bruising them. And that's kind of like paramount right in the beginning, right when you bring that fish over the rail, you know. And so, like I said, this year I'm going to be trying to bring all my fish over and setting them right onto a big piece of memory foam, doing my ikejime on there, because there's a lot of, you know, post-mortem movement happening when you run a wire up the spine of a fish. I mean, sometimes you know, I'll find that neural canal and the thing just jumps everywhere and spits the wire back out, and I got to find it again. And you know, you're gonna have that fish jumping around, and if you can have it sitting on somewhere that's soft, even a beach towel would be better than a non-skid deck, you know. So you know, fish care is really just work, and that's what it comes down to. And if it's really crazy and the fishing's really good and everybody's fired up to keep piling them into the boat, it gets hard to, you know, dedicate the time to processing them. And I understand why it happens, why people just load up, and seems to be kind of the name of the game for certain charters and different types of people that go out fishing. Just want to go out, kill as much as we can, come in with as much as we can. Doesn't really matter what the quality of the fish is. Quality is first and foremost on my list. If I'm going to kill something, it won't die in vain.
You're
right.
As it should be.
Welp.
What else?
Now that we got that out of the way, you guys want to talk about now?
That's a good segment. Before we started rolling, you were diving into fly fishing in saltwater.
Oh, okay.
And I thought you had some really cool stories. Also, obviously, as it translates to like your freshwater experiences and up in the Sierras and stuff, but and it kind of circles back to finding a way to have fun. Like, you can go throw a 3 or 4 inch swim bait in the bays and catch as many spotties as you want, or you can try your hand at fly fishing, which not many people do at all.
I just think that fly fishing in general has gained a lot more attraction and popularity among like a bigger group than it ever has, say, in the last decade. And I think more so now than ever, specifically relating to people in California, you know, that those trips to the Sierras in the spring, fall, or summertime are just like, you know, everybody wants to get a couple of those trips in. It's just awesome to be able to go up to the Sierras. And a lot of people are kind of intimidated by fly fishing, or just don't really want to get into it because it's not as cool or whatever. However, the more I've gotten into it, the more I could see myself being old and retired, and that's all I do is fly fishing. I could see transitioning out of any other kind of fishing and just strictly fly fishing. I mean, I really think it's like just a whole nother type of connection and fishing altogether. And in the last 5 years, I've gotten really into doing trips to Pyramid for cutthroats, fishing in the Sierras, doing a lot of stillwater fishing. and the fly rod's just like so versatile. And so we tried doing the same stuff we do at Pyramid for the cutthroats in the bay in Newport from our kayaks. We fish on these Hobie kayaks in the Newport, and we were always fishing just like your normal bait casters with like, you know, Ned rigs and plastics and that kind of stuff. And we came back from Pyramid from this one trip and just literally put the same tools together that we use there, and just changed our fly setups a little bit to kind of match like smell patterns and, you know, bait patterns that would be in the bay. And the success is like crazy. So we're out on our kayaks now, you know, fishing these outgoing tides, doing these long drifts on the current, and it's just like wide open on the fly rod, you know, having these crazy afternoons sometimes or mornings when the, you know, we fish outgoing tides pretty much exclusively, start right on that high when it transitions, and then you just fish that ripping outgoing current, and you do these long drifts on the kayak, and it's just bobber down. And when I first started doing it, I was fishing like literally the same way at Pyramid, fishing a double fly rig under an indicator, and I was like catching 2 spotties at a time regularly. And then you get bent up and start pulling on this thing, and you're like, what you think you got is a huge fish, you come up with these 2 small spotties.
You're using multiple hooks?
Using 2 flies.
Okay.
You know, so I got 2 flies that are like whatever 30 inches apart from each other, getting doubles all the time. I got a spotty and a halibut one time.
I was gonna say, you can
That's
catch
so
a halibut.
cool.
Yeah, we've caught quite a few halibut.
On the fly.
Yeah, we've caught some sargos.
What do you think about targeting bluefin on the fly?
Oh, I think it's really
Would you try
difficult, really challenging. Well, you know what?
I think it would get bit.
Yeah, no, it would
It
totally get
would.
bit.
It would suck.
Especially if they're keyed in on that really that
Small
that
micro
tiny,
bait.
that yeah.
Well, one thing I
tiny
did a few
anchovy.
years ago was use a clear bubble that you fill with water,
Like those bonito ones?
like the ones the guys use on the pier for
Yeah.
bonita.
Yeah.
And then like 7 feet behind that, put a small bonita fly or like a little tiny
Just a little
fly,
feather deal?
and then bond that into a foamer with
Instant.
It's bit.
instant.
Instant.
Yeah, when they're really on that like micro anchovy.
Add it to the rubber duck.
Yeah. Now you've
Yeah.
got a way to bomb that in with
Yeah.
a big, you know, the conventional jig stick, right? And so I have a friend, Dan, here in San Diego, who's like a really accomplished fly fisherman. He does a lot of sight fishing for Corbina and stuff. And, you know, him and I have been talking about fly fishing for tuna for a long time, because it wouldn't take that much to beat the 20-pound record.
Is that what it is?
Well, yeah, so it's 20-pound tippet, and I think the fish you would need to catch only has to be, I forget what the record is now. It's like 20-something pounds. So if you caught like a 30-pound
You gotta
bluefin
do it.
on
Yeah.
20-pound tippet,
Yeah.
it might have been broken. I'm not sure. I'm speaking kind of off the cusp here. I don't know what the deal is, but I know it's not that big of a tuna you would need. If you went out with like an IGFA leader setup and 20-pound tippet and caught a 30-pound tuna, I think you'd get the IGFA all tackle world record for tuna.
I think that's got to be on the goals for 2024.
Yeah.
Problem is, it's a little tough on my boat because I got my bow is high and there's a lot of stuff going on, and you kind of need.
We'll figure out the boat. We'll figure out the
You
boat.
just need the right boat. Yeah. The problem is, you hook a bluefin, even a small one, and you know, on 20-pound, they get down straight up and down, and you just don't really have any leverage with the fly rod. You know, back when the Dorado were here super thick, I caught a ton of Dorados on the
I
fly
bet.
rod. It
Really?
was insane.
Oh, man.
Super fun. Yeah, like pull up to Dorado foamers and just cast in any kind of anchovy pattern. Anything. Yeah, and that was a ton of fun, and that's when we started, like, the wheels spun a little bit. We're like, oh, okay, what else can we do this on? And I've had great days at Catalina fishing for bonito on the fly rods, and it's a lot of fun for sure. It's definitely a whole nother kind of bracket of challenges that it transitions you to thinking about. And then it's also just like, it's such a different connection to the fish with a fly rod than it is with any type of conventional spinning or conventional casting gear. I think the bluefin thing would be really cool. It's hard. There's a reason that it's a small fish to beat the record, you know? If you got one that cooperated and you could actually get it to come up to the gaffs, it wouldn't be that big of a fish to make some noise on that whole scene, you know?
Wow. That sounds. Have you ever fly fished?
A couple times. I
Have
mean,
you actually?
yeah.
The bay fishing, though, the reason I got into it was because we were like itching to sort of brush up on our skill sets for when we would go to Pyramid, because it's like, okay, we're going to go to Pyramid, we're going to drive 10 hours, we're going to spend a ton of money on fuel, going to buy the daily permits and the camping fees, and we're going to go out there and freeze our asses off. And a lot of times when you haven't done that fishing for a while, you go out there and you spend the first majority of your trip just getting tuned into figuring out how to cast again. You know, it's not like I sit there and roll cast a two-handed 8-weight spay rod all the time, so you're rusty, right? And so we were like, okay, how can we start to kind of do some of this stuff so we brush up on it before we go? And we just started bringing our fly rods in the kayak, same rods we fish at Pyramid, fishing the same style as we do there, and it's game on. It's so much fun. And now I just fish a single fly because I kept hooking all these double spotties, and it's kind of getting a little nuts. And just a single fly, like 10-pound fluoro, anything that looks like a smelt or any type of bait pattern. And the key is to just get your fly like relatively close to the bottom, within 3 feet of the bottom. Fish that outgoing tide, and go anywhere you would normally go, cast plastics or whatever, and watch the bobber go down. Man, it's so much fun.
You should come down to San Diego Bay in the spring, and we have full on like bird schools in the bay.
Right.
Ricky didn't want to drop.
That was like, oh, should I say that? Should I say
full
that?
speed, Vina, everything. Corbina.
I think
Vina,
it would be
halibut.
because it's all top water, so you don't have to sink. You don't have
like
to sink
it's
your
literally
fly out.
offshore fishing in the bay, like the way you're looking for like bird spots.
It's straight turn
It's
bird.
great. Yeah, it's really cool.
Wow.
That's so cool. They're pushing bait around, obviously.
Oh yeah, there's like little mini foamers sometimes,
And there's an
it's
opportunity
cool.
to catch everything. You catch spotties, you catch halibut, you catch.
Yeah, and the guys who are hard, the core fly guys are typically fishing like a full sinking line, and they're casting and stripping a fly, right? And so you're actively stripping, where I'm like fishing an indicator. I get it out there and I watch it, and I'm watching my bobber go down. And so now I bring 2 rods on my kayak. I bring a full sinking line and I strip, and then I'll transition back and forth between that and my indicator. And the stripping's super fun, but it's more technical. You got to strip according to your drift, and so you don't get on the bottom, and you hang a lot of eelgrass that way. Fishing the indicator is a lot more time with a hook presented in a place where it's going to get a bite. You get less bites on the strip, but it makes you a better fisherman at the end of it. So between casting sinking lines and stripping and fishing the indicator, I don't even bring a conventional bait caster when I fish the bay anymore. It's strictly fly now.
No, it sounds like a fucking blast, honestly.
That sounds so fun.
Yeah, and if somebody's just trying to get into it or trying to figure out whether they like fishing, it's such a good trial and error place to go do it. Like everyone in California who lives coastal's got access to a bay somewhere. Yeah. And you could go and goof around with your fly rod, and then when you do go up to the Sierras or take that trip to Pyramid, you're going to be like way ahead of the game and not fumbling around and capitalizing on time with hooks in the water fishing where you're going to actually get a bite, right?
Yeah.
So it's been fun.
No, it sounds like it. I've never fly fished once in my life, but
I'll come down to San Diego. We'll do it.
all right,
Yeah.
I'll hit you up. I think the last thing I want to round out with, I'd like to hear, I think now that this kind of just came to my mind, I think your 2024 goal has to be catching a bluefin on the fly.
It's definitely on the radar, no doubt.
I'd like to hear, like, Jazz, I honestly don't know, like, what you do on your day-to-day, and I'm curious about it, and, like, what other fishing besides this tournament
It's a male
stuff.
stripper. We don't
I was
talk about
literally
that.
about to say that.
I figured he
dances.
he dances. He dances.
He can dance.
Like yours and Nate's, I don't know, usually like your fishing goals for like 2024.
Fishing goals, I mean, I think another tournament win or a podium for our tournament season would probably be a huge goal. And I think with the consistency that we've had, we've got a pretty good shot, because I think we have like 5 tournaments. So I think a podium in one of those would be pretty solid. 300-pound bluefin on the new flyer, I think, would be a goal for 2024.
Sure.
It didn't seem like last year we had a lot of that like 300-pound grade. It was a lot of that like 150 fish. So hopefully 2024 has some of the 300 and 400 pounders. And I know that you caught that one that was like a 420 or something, and in 2018. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. You didn't hear
big.
about that?
Yeah.
It was late season, and I did a trip on this big.
Was it that yacht out in Newport?
Well, it's been kind of all over. It's a big like 112-foot Nordland called the Illusion, and I've done a lot of trips on the boat. The owner who had it then has sold it since, and I'm not sure where that boat is now. But we were doing like late season swordfish and bluefin trips, and we ended up out at the Tanner on like, I think it was 18 or maybe 2019,
and around there.
We just had one of those days where it was just so on.
Yeah.
And we ended up catching one that taped out at 420 something.
Jesus.
And
That's big.
we hung it on the scale on the boat, and it was rough and really windy and blowing, and it was just really hard to get a weight, but the scale was like bouncing between like 360 and 480, you know, and so we did the tape, and we did that a couple times. I mean, it was just a Goliath of a fish. I mean, like you can tell when the thing's hanging in the pictures, it's like that thing's
huge,
different,
major.
It's the biggest one I've ever seen or heard of here in California for sure. But we didn't get an official weight, so you know,
doesn't count.
Yeah, it doesn't count.
Doesn't count.
It was big.
Wow. That's crazy.
What about you?
My goals?
Yeah.
I just want to fish a lot, man, and learn.
Yep.
That's what it's all about for me. Is just like
time on the water.
Time on the water. Like I could sit here and like the reality is I just like fishing with people who have a skill set that's either their expertise is like something other than I normally target, like a specific type of fishing where there's a lot to learn.
Yeah.
Like that's what it's all about for me. And I just know, like, I think we're so incredibly lucky to have this bluefin fishery. But dude, like spotty fishing on the fly rod, right? Like that's the kind of stuff now, or like even I've kind of had like an itch to just focus a little bit more on the inshore and just kind of fight the urge to run out and catch another bluefin and maybe like start fishing some other stuff that
a couple of calicos. Go
Yeah.
back to the roots.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Calicos.
We need a good sea bass here, you know? It's
I was
like,
about to say that's like one fish where like I've caught a few of them, but I really haven't even tapped into that fishery at all. So I have like everything to learn.
Yeah.
And so that's just fun to me, is just like embarking down a fishing path where you really don't know what you're doing.
Totally.
And you can just kind of absorb and see what works. And then like you were saying, like find something that works for you where you're confident, and then kind of put the blinders on and let people talk their bullshit on that's not how you should do it, and just stick with your program.
Build your confidence.
Yeah,
exactly. For me, it's just about like how many days can I get on the water. My goal last year was like, I'm going to fish every single opportunity I get. I'm not going to let any excuses get in the way. Like if I can go, I'm going.
That's a great goal.
That's my goal. That's my goal.
You realize your goal is like every man's dream.
And so, you know, just like if you can go. If the weather's good, go. Whatever. Don't make excuses.
If the weather's bad, go. Like if you have the opportunity to get on a boat and go chase these fish, like it is the fish of a lifetime. And again, like we're spoiled and we've gotten to catch a bunch of these things, but not everyone can. And every day is like we're stoking on it. You catch one fish or you catch 6 fish, like you're so stoked, and just being on the water, like even if you don't catch a fish, it is so rewarding, because I enjoy mostly like not staring at my phone for 10 hours in the day.
100%. Yeah. And just being on the water. I mean, what do you see out there on a day-to-day that is, I mean, you can't come close to that anywhere else, right? It's incredible out there. I mean, I think I speak for Jazz and I both. I mean, one of the things him and I both love more than anything is, you know, we fish the island a lot. I go to Catalina and just fish inshore. I mean, we halibut fishing. I'm
I love
obsessed
halibut.
over
halibut fishing.
You
Is
know?
rad, and they're so good to eat.
Halibut fish in the beach.
Dude, my favorite fish to eat.
I want to log as much time as I can doing that kind of stuff, because I really like it a lot. It's super fun. It's like low impact, you know? Just get out as many days as possible. Learn as much as you can.
Explore all the different fisheries that we have.
Yeah, like you said, things change, right? I mean, I've lived through the doldrums of California fishing. I mean, I've lived through seasons of just absolute pull your hair out. There's nothing why are we even here? It's the stupidest thing ever. And so take advantage of these incredible years and, you know, the health is wealth, right? Just like stay healthy, get strong, go out and conquer the fishing.
Yeah. And a 300-pound bluefin is...
Yeah, that would be ideal.
It's a good side prize.
Yeah.
I'm good. If you guys have anything else, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, I'm stoked. Thanks for coming out, and I think everyone's going to enjoy this one a lot.
Nice. Yeah, I'm stoked. I think that's good. It's a good round out.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, good luck this year. See you guys.